There's an interview with Mark KERN. You may know him as the guy who wrote the tweet about Starfield's start screen being not to his liking. He also put a tweet out about a month ago saying that he feels that Xbox hires bots for their social media to promote the brand. So I'm sure that's what most of you are here for, which makes sense. I thought we were going to have like a 10-minute conversation just about the start screen issue, but this is also this guy's been in it for a very long time. He was one of the leaders on World of Warcraft Originals, Starcraft 2, Diablo 2. He was the creator, CEO, founder of Factor 5, Form 5, Red5. Something with the 5 in it made the great, or at one time, which we'll talk about, the great Redfall. It's not true. What's a goddamn thing? Firefall. There's too many goddamn games with too many names out there. The point is, if you're here for the dessert, which is the screen, that's at the end. Check the time codes. We talk about his career at Blizzard. We talk about the Activision Blizzard merger and how that kind of messed things up a little bit in his opinion. We talk about him founding a company that wanted to take on World of Warcraft in some ways, and how he had this brilliant idea to bring a bunch of people on that had the chops to do it. We talk about the controversy that he is still dealing with to this day, the narrative, the timeline, the lies about his time at that company. And then obviously we roll into the start screen. The start screen right at the very end, it's on the time code below. I'll just call it Starfield start screen, so you'll know if that's what you're here for. Go right there. Meanwhile, thank you for watching. Consider a subscription, consider a membership, consider liking and notifications and all the shit you got to consider. Come on now. This was a great chat, Mark. If you're out there, I really very much appreciate all of your time. We talked for an hour and a half. I learned a lot. So cool to talk to people who were there at these pivotal moments at these pivotal companies. It was really, really cool talking to you, Mark. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. Again, time code's down below. Coming up later tonight, I believe I will be posting my thoughts on Keeley's opening Gamescom show, which was also earlier this morning. And then I'll be back tomorrow with live Gabbing and Games. So be well. Here we go. Here's Sting to play us out. Yeah, well, I mean, let me talk to you about that at Blizzard. I mean, I definitely want to get into sort of why you're in the news this time. You were in the news about something else recently that I'm trying to go back to my DMs. I don't remember what it was, but we'll get to that. But I mean, you are known primarily, as far as I know, for being one of the OGs of Blizzard, not just when it comes to, I think you were like a production manager, producer on Starcraft and World of Warcraft, but also Diablo 2. But you were there when they were Silicon and Synapse. I mean, I look at your resume and I see that you've got Rock and Roll Racing, which was a huge inspiration for Twisted Metal, as well as Bloodthorn, which is one of the great SNES games of all time. What were you doing on those titles?
No. I don't know why that's there.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't on those titles. I came to Blizzard when it was about, I would say, 60 people.
Okay.
60 people. They just moved from their Red Hill offices, where they were Synacon and Synapse, into their Irvine offices. And my first project there was actually, I was recruited by Alan Anham, who's probably, no one's ever heard of him, but he's probably like the greatest game designer I've ever met and one of the key founders of Blizzard. And he wanted someone to head up a third-party project called Ryko, which they've talked about, which was like an Asian RPG. And it was a team that they had basically stolen out of Westwood Studios at the time.
Oh, wow.
The big rivalry between them. And they said, hey, we need one of the four horsemen. It's like, we've got, we need someone with more experience to come in and who understands some of this stuff to sort of like see what we got here and see what we can make. Well, I ended up canceling my own project. I was like, this thing is not going to work. You have a bunch of rookie people. The programmer literally had how to program a game in 30 days on his bookshelf. Wow. The lead programmer.
This was for the Blizzard game they were making, the RPG?
They were going to make a Japanese RPG.
Okay.
Called Raiko, and
Got it.
I said I'll find you a better team, and I found a better team, and they were fantastic. But at the time, Blizzard was always struggling with multiple projects, and so they're like, "Hey, we can't go ahead with this." And I said, "I think you're right. I think we should shelve this one." And I immediately moved on to StarCraft.
Okay.
So I came on during StarCraft 1, but I actually was working with Blizzard before then as a third party. I had like a 5-person company, and we were making a top-down arcade shooter for them that was going to be part of a line called Blizzard Arcade.
Cool.
Right, and I'd already had a game published with Interplay at the time, and they were going to do this whole line of like small arcade games that were free on Battle.net, and so they hired us to do it. We were building the prototype, and then classic Blizzard strategy at the time was, oh my God, we can't do too many things at once. Let's just focus on this game called Diablo. And we knew Diablo was in development. We were doing builds.
So the biggest hit up until that point then had been Warcraft, correct?
Let's see. So Warcraft 2.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Warcraft 2 was the biggest hit at the time. And they were working on a turn-based claymation game called Diablo.
Oh, wow. Wow. It was claymation?
It was turn-based claymation.
Interesting.
And when the success of Warcraft 2 was out, and they cemented themselves as, hey, it was real-time strategy. Real-time is the future, not turn-based. We have to convert Diablo from being turn-based to real-time, and that's when the switch occurred.
Got it. And what did you ever see it as claymation?
I never saw a claymation build. The builds I got were prior to E3. And by that time, they had already switched. But yeah, we talked about it all the time when I was there.
That's amazing. It's like Neverwood, I guess. That was the first claymation game I remember from Tanapple. So you were on that as what, producer for StarCraft?
Yeah, I was brought in as a producer on StarCraft. I think it was associate producer at the time.
Okay.
And but I was really doing that, and I was also working on this leading up the Raiko project.
Right. And then everything switched to Diablo.
Third party.
Okay.
Yeah, which was third party. And I said, we got to kill that. I got the nickname Slingblade in Blizzard because I kept canceling projects.
Yeah. The other one, sometimes that's smart. The other one you canceled was what?
Warcraft Adventures.
Oh, I remember hearing all about that. I was excited about that. It just wasn't good? Or what was the moment you realized it's time to put this out of its misery?
Well, I mean, the reason I got into this industry is because I'm a huge adventure game freak, right?
Okay.
Back in the point-and-click days, but even the text days, I was a huge Infocom fan, and I used to speed run. I used to try to speed run Infocom games all the time, and I think I got through Infidel in like 2 hours.
Oh wow, yeah, that pyramid was no fucking joke, man. Because I think wasn't it like randomly recreating itself or. There was some kind of procedural thing, and the map kept changing, or at least that's how my 14-year-old brain perceived it. But that was a bitch of a game.
I don't even remember. But I was known as like the adventure game guy, right? And so they said, hey, can you take a look at Warcraft Adventures, which is being developed by a third party of Russian developers.
Okay. And I didn't even know that. I thought it was local. Okay.
No, it was Russian, and they had like challenges. Like they said, trying to get at the time, right? Trying to get Russian artists to draw orcs and elves. We kept getting things back like garden gnomes because there was no, Lord of the Rings wasn't out. There was no crossover. There was a lot of challenges there. But my forte was that I do art, I code, all at a mediocre level, right? But I can speak the language.
Okay.
So I started going through the source code of this game, and it was a point-and-click graphical adventure. And I realized that the code was just horrendous, and I was like, why is it taking so long to make these changes? And I brought in Steve Moretsky from Infocom.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah.
You're a great hero of mine. And I brought him in, and I said, I want to bring Steve in, and we're going to redesign all the puzzles because they're crap. And I think Bill Roper, myself, and Steve, and Chris, we locked ourselves in a room, and we didn't leave for a week. We were in the main conference room, and we redesigned the whole game. all the puzzles, all the jokes. Straight.
Did the developer in Russia know this was coming, or they were totally like surprised?
Oh, they knew we were unhappy.
Okay.
And you know, and we were of the opinion that it's got to be a certain quality, or we won't ship it at all. You know, we'll eat our young. And so we redesigned it, but as soon as we gave them the design doc, it was taking forever to make changes. And when they would make a change, it would break something else. And so I said, well, why is this happening? So I said, give me the source code. So I went into the source code, and maybe this is more technical than the audience wants to hear, but you know, usually you have an adventure game, an inventory system, like any game, right? Yeah. And that inventory system's one piece of code, right? It handles inventory no matter where you are in the game.
Right.
Well, the way this game was coded...
let me guess. So what, every environment it redid it? It had to...
Every single screen redid the inventory code.
Oh,
so if you wanted to make one change to the UI, you had to make it across, I think there were over 500 different environments.
Wow.
And I said, this isn't going to work. And there's too many, too many barriers here to getting the changes made. And then Full Throttle came out. And they switched from 2D to being 3D adventure games. And at that time, Blizzard was like, "Oh, we're gonna, you know, they're gonna eat our lunch." It's like, and so we decided. I said, and there was some overbilling happening too.
Oh,
I went through all the billing as well.
Well, you know, those extra inventory screens are expensive. You know,
that's true.
Costs a lot of money. So that was the day you guys said, "Fuck it, we're killing it," and then that moved you on to Diablo 2 at that point.
That moved me on to let's see, I'm trying to remember the sequence. I think it was well, I was still on Starcraft at the time, right?
Okay.
So I was as an associate producer. So I designed all the. They had me redesign the Battle.net UI. They had me do all the glue. We call them glue screens. I don't know what you called them.
What were they?
Things like scoreboards for the game. So I was like, hey, we got to have this animated. We got to have this have an impact after they finish a game. So we did animated bars. We did all this stuff, and I was working on StarCraft at the time. And then after that, I moved on to two things. StarCraft 64. They were like, help Nintendo translate this to console.
Right.
And that was my first console experience, and actually my only console experience.
Okay.
And we kept trying to tell them, it's like, listen, this game is not going to translate to console. It's meant for keyboard and mouse and everything else. And so I came up with a lot of things with the team about how we were going to streamline this and have medics auto heal and this and that. And Nintendo said, no, we want straight StarCraft because we're afraid that if we make any changes, it's not going to sell.
Okay.
So when we said, okay, that's up to you. So we ended up using those ideas later for StarCraft 2, right?
Right.
And also Brood War. And then I moved on to Brood War, and I ran the strike team on that. The strike team at Blizzard, they don't have them anymore, but the strike team at Blizzard's like, we pull talent from all the teams in Blizzard into a small, like, tiger team, and we play all the builds, and we generate change lists and feedback lists and things like this for polish and, you know, what's working, what's not working. And so I ran the strike team for Brood War, and we had a lot of fun of that. And then we did some extra campaigns as well. I learned a lot of lessons about game design and game feedback then. I don't want to go too far into that.
No. Well, I mean, you know, it's almost like maybe a different interview when you're free. Because I want to, you know, I was telling people on the Discord that we were going to talk, and you know, one of the questions people were like, "Oh, I'm very curious what he thinks about Blizzard today and how the Diablo team is handling the feedback today and all the negativity." I mean, I love Diablo 4, but I'm not one of these guys. Like, I haven't touched it in about a month and a half, so the latest patch and all that stuff, that's lost on me. But you know, I would love to dive deep into this with you if you're ever free.
Sure, yeah.
But let me, but okay. So let's put a pin in that for the moment, because I mean, you're right. There's a whole mountain we could climb, and I think the audience would love to climb it and hear us climbing it, because it's one of the, you know, I mean, Blizzard, and people may not remember this. Blizzard at the time, before the Activision acquisition, and I don't, you know, whether they're coming back or not is not for me to say necessarily, but it really was the, you know, the shining city on a hill for game developers. It was like they ship when they're ready. At least that was the narrative. They ship when they're ready. Everything they put out is fantastic. They kill shit because they'd rather kill shit than put out shit. I mean, that was the narrative. Was that really what it was like, or is that a little sort of PR that the teams would kind of help sell?
No, that was absolutely what we were about. Those were the values, right?
Right.
We canceled those projects, and I got the nickname Sling Blade. I actually had like a scythe hanging in my office,
Right.
You know, from 1912 or something. And I got that nickname because, you know, I would be like, no, let's kill this and let's kill that. And then some of these were my own projects. I was like, I'm going to be out of a job. I just started at Blizzard, right? But I said, it's more important. The game is more important. And we were always that way. And when we had game design decisions that were contentious, we would fight like brothers, right? And I say brothers because at the time, there were no women at Blizzard except maybe one or two, right? And so we would get into a room and we would just argue. And you know, one of my favorite designers at Blizzard, James Finney, who went on to Guild Wars, one of his favorite phrases as a counter argument was, if anybody said, "Hey, why don't we do this with the game?" He was like, "Yeah, well, sure, if you want to make a bad game."
Right.
And so everyone would be like, "Oh, are we coming to that?"
Right.
And then someone would argue for another feature and say, you know, oh, but you know, it would cost an extra 50 cents a box to do this or whatever, and we that guy would be booed. And and we would these arguments, I swear to God, they were knockdown, you know, drag out fights. But
did you leave before the acquisition or after it?
I left at a very pivotal point. I left after 6 months after we shipped WoW.
Okay.
I was completely fried. I had 2 Blackberries. You know, it was basically helping to run the company as well as the game, because there were so many new departments we had to build to change from box games to live service. It was an overwhelming job, and I was working 24/7, and I was just completely toast. And I remember missing a call at dinner because I turned my Blackberries off for an hour to have dinner with my wife. And then Mike, the CEO, my boss, calls me on the carpet and says, "We had a fire during that dinner." "And where were you?" I was like, "Dude, I was gone for an hour." And we argued about that a little bit. But I was thinking I was never going to get in the game industry again because it was just too much, you know?
Right.
And it really was at that time. But the point I was trying to make is that no matter how passionately we argued, we all agreed that the game was the thing. What was best for the game was the most important. And when we reached a decision, we all got behind that decision, and we made it happen. And the art and any sort of heat or animosity or all that stuff was forgotten, right? So
do you think today, because I mean, I know in indie and in AA that passion can still exist and be rewarded by the consumer, but when you're dealing now with budgets of 250 million in a lot of cases, at least in console AAA and PC AAA, do you think because there are so many other outside of game developer cooks in that kitchen that could exist as much today or at all today?
It depends how strong your culture is. That was definitely happening when we were acquired by Vivendi and you know, and they wanted to bring in their own HR, they wanted to bring in their own IT, they wanted to bring in their own oversight people, and we pushed back and we said hell no. And you know, part of our job at upper management was forming a wall between the corporate owners and Blizzard. And the reason we were able to keep that wall up was because of the sheer success of our games, because we generated the lion's share of the revenue.
Why do you think that's such
that changed
in terms of generating the lion's share?
Yes. Do you know why?
Let's see. World of Warcraft comes out. You guys were making bank with subscriptions. EverQuest? I don't know. What was the reason?
Mobile games.
Oh, right.
Because mobile games exploded, and you know, and Activision bought the Candy Crush people and everything else.
Yep.
And suddenly, I think that's when Blizzard started to lose creator power, right? Because as soon as Blizzard wasn't pulling in the lion's share of the revenue, because with predatory monetary practices,
Right.
mobile games will generate 10 to 100x. Okay, and as a public company, you can't ignore that. You can't just say we're not going to do mobile games. We're not going to do predatory money practices. Shareholders would be like, well, now you're breaching fiduciary duty. Why aren't you doing these things that are clearly driving profits in the industry?
Yeah, and gamers today still get upset about that, and that's exactly what I tell them. It's not that I'm a fan of a lot of microtransactions. I don't care about the cosmetic ones, but a lot of people still get upset with that, and it's like, if you were in that CEO chair, you do the same thing. I mean, it's not,
as a public company, you have no choice. You will get sued if you don't.
Yeah, I mean, I've read a couple of different takes on the fiduciary law aspect of it. Like, I think there was a Supreme Court case relatively recently where it was like the company doesn't have to do anything to make money if it can kind of explain away a bigger picture that they're aiming for. But yes, philosophically though, I think most, if not all, public companies still operate that way. It's like, if we can squeeze another penny out, we'll do it. Doesn't matter the cost.
You can get away with that for a while, but if mobile companies are making 10 times your revenue, shareholders are going to be like, what the fuck? And
you may
file
not
shareholder lawsuits. And you're going to have to deal with that.
Or you'll just have people say, fuck it, we're going to go, give our money somewhere else, because you guys aren't playing right.
So that's when the dynamic changed. That's when Blizzard started to lose political power within the organization, right? Activision Blizzard, at the time of the merger, was really Blizzard Activision in many ways. And so, we had this protective wall. We pushed back against every time they said, we want to put our own guys in right on your team, and we were able to say no. And as soon as that dynamic changed, and we no longer had that leverage, that's, I think, when you see the beginnings of.
I'm curious about this though. When you still had the leverage, why do these companies buy these companies that make shit tons of money and then want to fuck it up? It's like, why don't they go, you know what you're doing, we just want some of your bottom line, we'll stay out of your way. I mean, why did they think you needed any of their help at all back when you guys had the sway?
Well, the history of acquisitions has, in all of business, in all industries, usually turns out for the worse. They almost always never work. I think that, let's face it, there's a tremendous amount of ego involved at the top, right?
Yeah.
And people think that CEOs are rational, money-only driven beings, but the real powerful ones, the Kotiks of the world, things like this, there's a huge ego there.
There has to be, right? Because once you make the kind of money he's got, it's not like you're like in it for that anymore. There's got to be some weird internal compass driving you. And yeah, maybe it is just an out of control ego. I don't know.
It's an interesting path. First, you want the money, then you want the power, then you want the respect. And it's funny because what you did to get there sometimes doesn't earn you the respect at the end, and then you get very upset. And then after respect, you know what it is that CEOs wish they had?
Don't tell me. Love?
Health.
Oh yeah.
Health. They burn out so fast. They give up their health, and when they're older, they just wish they could live longer.
I wonder if there was an inciting incident for someone like Bobby Kotick or Strass Zelnick or whatever, where it's like, if he just you go back in time and stop the bully from shoving him in a locker, Jeff Bezos wouldn't be the asshole he is today, spending his money going to space versus, letting his employees.
Maybe it's bullying. I think you can broaden that. I think it's adversity, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of CEOs out there, and there's two types of CEOs. And you can usually tell by how attractive they are. Kotick isn't very attractive.
That's right.
He was brass knuckles. He built his whole way. People hate him. I hate him. But you got to respect that. It's the conditions of adversity that drive that. The other type of CEO sort of makes their way up to the ranks, and they enter large established companies, and they're more caretakers. They're not driving the company. They're just making sure that it keeps making money and it keeps growing at a certain rate.
And they're the good looking ones. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, they're the good looking
because
ones.
they
You
can
tell.
climb the ladder easier. Because pretty privilege.
You climb the ladder easier. Let's face it. There's a lot of benefits to being good looking and charming, and to be able to navigate political waters in an established company.
True.
Those companies aren't driven by innovators, right? And I would say to your listeners, just go out there and look at CEOs and how attractive they are, and see which ones came from nothing backgrounds and built their way up and innovated, versus the ones who are just caretakers of a company. And people are going to say, well, Kotick didn't innovate anything else. Well, he bought Activision as a brand when it was failing,
Right.
and he got Steve Wynn to back him, and he had nothing, and he built this whole thing up.
Yeah, I mean,
And
he didn't innovate as a designer of video games, but I think certainly...
no, but as a businessman.
Right, that's right. I think as much as I can't stand the guy, you can't fault the guy as an executive, other than the way he runs his companies morally.
So, I don't know Kotick, and I've never met him, but I've studied his history, right? And if you look at what Kotick's strategy is in games, look at what he did with Call of Duty. People probably don't remember this, but he basically took Call of Duty. He got rid of the founders of the company, right? And they spun off to do Respawn. Mm-hmm. And his strategy was, once I got a hot brand, milk it for all it's worth as fast as you can, grow it as fast as possible. So he committed to, instead of doing one Call of Duty every, I don't know, what was it, every 2 years or something like that, yeah. He split it into, he gave it to two teams, and he pumped out yearly releases. And that's what's interesting with what's happening with Diablo right now. Because if you remember, they're already talking about Diablo 5. Diablo 4 just shipped. I don't know if you know this. They're already talking about
I did not know
Diablo
that. So
5.
they're what are they going to have a relatively short games as a service lifespan for 4 and roll into 5 like Call of Duty's is what you're saying?
Yeah, I think what they're going to do is, because Diablo 4 is, it's not, they tried to make it a live service game. It's hitting some problems with that right now. I think, Kotick's go-to strategy is take the brand, pump out as many of it as you can, get the maximum value out of that franchise as fast as you can. And the way to, and his go-to strategy is pump them out every year, maybe with Diablo it'll be every 2 years, right? And I'm quite sure that in order to do that, they're going to have to spin up a second team.
Right.
Because
of course.
So I see this happening now, and I'm thinking, Kotick must still be calling the shots, even though he's 1 foot out the door at this point.
Yeah, I was actually talking to Michael Pachter about that yesterday. I said, what do you think the chances are that he sticks around? And Pachter's like, no, he's out of there like December 31st. He said he might make like $800 million and he's gone. I'm just like, holy shit.
I mean, he made his money.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's his disciple, right? Whoever's number 2 there that was being groomed to take over. But it's a very Kotick strategy. And so, I was amused to see them already talking about Diablo 5.
Right. And then, okay, so yeah, and like I said, I want to have a different conversation down the road, because then you left and you started Team 5, and was it Firefall is what you guys worked on?
Yeah, Red5 and Fire. Well, you know what I was going to do after I left was I wasn't going to do anything with games. I wanted to do a dating site.
Really?
Because I met my wife through an online dating site way back in the day, and I was like, well, what if we took some aspects of games so you could go on virtual dates and stuff like that, because you never know what creep you're going to meet, you could go to Paris and you could do this and you could start building and I didn't even know much about social networks back then.
Right.
What if you had some kind of social network where you could give each other likes and that type of thing? But the more I looked into the market at the time, the more I thought, this is a lot smaller in games, and I'm really more interested in games. And so after I did nothing for 6 months after WoW, I was so frightened. I slept.
Right. Understood. Totally get it.
I was just in bed, and I just slept the whole time. And finally, I was like, okay, I want to do a game. And so we founded Red5 Studios, and we wanted to do an MMO shooter, because we were playing Battlefield nonstop on the WoW team.
Okay.
And we were even playing PlanetSide, and we're like, PlanetSide really could be a lot cooler than this. And so that's a game we really wanted to make, and Blizzard didn't want a green light, and so we started a team to do that. And I remember it was super challenging to get any sort of interest from Western publishers. We would have these meetings at E3, and they would be like, so what's this WoW thing? And does it make any money?
Real? Whoa. Okay.
Nobody could believe it, right? They didn't see it coming. This is even a year out, and we had no interest from Western publishers. All the interest was in Asia.
Right.
Asia was really hot on MMOs, and so we had a Asian publisher for a while, and we got the green light for the game, and we started the studio, and it was very difficult because we couldn't recruit anyone, because it was a time Gears of War just came out, and this is the other pivotal moment in gaming I talk about. Gears of War came out, next gen graphics was the thing, and as soon as we did next gen graphics, our art team had to increase, and our graphics team on the code side had to like double or quadruple in size. So everyone was hiring, right? Everyone was running out, trying to bulk up their teams, get enough people to do the work involved to do next generation graphics. And so we had a very hard time recruiting, and it was just tough to grow the team until we came up with, I came up with the Golden Ticket program. So anyways, this is a long story.
I'm actually quite curious because, I remember seeing key art for it. I forget what the first show you guys were at. And I'm like, that looks like a Blizzard game. Like the visual style was very kind of Blizzardy, if I remember correctly, right? It had, it was a little cartoony and a little chunky, armor and all that. Yep. And I thought it looked really cool. And so, no, I'm curious, what was the Golden Ticket program? Because I've never played this game.
Well, the Golden Ticket program was my idea of how to recruit talent that we needed to drive the game.
Okay.
Right? And I wonder if we sent you one.
I don't know.
Thinking back, I don't know. Maybe.
I don't think so. No.
I think we were mainly targeting people with shooter backgrounds, and
so Cliff got one.
I don't know. I should ask him.
Yeah.
and some MMO backgrounds. Although I didn't want MMO people, because the last thing I wanted to make was WoW.
Right.
I said this isn't WoW with guns. This is a different action-oriented experience. And so the Golden Ticket, there's only two ways to get exceptional talent onto your team. And I talk about this sometimes. Because the people who are sending out resumes usually are, they're not the top 10%ers.
Right. Those people you call.
Those people don't even have to send out a resume.
Right.
They're like, I'm leaving, and then they get calls.
That's right.
And then they go to the next opportunity. Or they talk to their friends, and their friends like, I'm working on this game, and for whatever reason, the guy's unsatisfied or the gal's unsatisfied, and they go, okay, yeah, let's talk. So the resumes you get tend to be pretty mid, right? Especially if you're a new company coming out. And so the only two ways I found to recruit talent is either you spot them when they're right out of school or just getting started. And by the way, this is why I personally reviewed every resume that came across. I wouldn't let the HR touch it, because HR sits there and scans for keywords. Oh, I need 2 years of this and 5 years of that, and you got to know Maya. And I said, screw that. I just want the talent. We'll train if they got the talent. So I would go through the resumes and search for the diamonds in the rough. That's what I would call them.
Okay.
I would look at every reel. I would look at everything. I would follow up if they looked interesting. And that way we could recruit talent that was just starting to become mega talented, right? The other way you do it is some people, and that's how a lot of game core teams start. New companies start. It's like they get their couple of talented friends they know from their company or other companies, and the 5 of them go off together and start a studio, right? But that we had that, but we needed more. And so I needed to really go after the top talent, and top talent doesn't answer recruiter calls. Right. So game recruiters, they call them, they just laugh. So what I did was I picked a list of 100 people that I wanted to recruit that I thought had the skills needed to do what we were doing, and we had to catch their attention. So I didn't use a recruiter. I hired I came up with the idea to take. Do you remember the little nano iPods, the little tiny shuffles?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
They were like
Little
little
squares. Yeah,
right?
yeah, they're cool.
And I basically researched every candidate, and I pre-recorded a message, a personalized message to each of them, saying what I loved about what they did, what we're doing, why I think they had the perfect skills for this, and how I want to talk to them more. Then I went to Apple and I said I want to do mass engravings. I want a different name engraved on 100 different shuffles.
Good Lord!
And they said what? And I said yeah. I said, we don't do that. And what's interesting is that after this, they launched a program that lets you do this, but we were the first. And so I had the person's name engraved on the iPod. There was a personalized message to them, and then we wrapped it in a mystery box. It was like a box within a box within a box, like a Russian nesting doll.
Yep, cool.
And you had to like peel, and each layer of the box had gorgeous hired a graphic designer and a package designer, and each layer of the box had like a little bit more teaser concept art from the game and more mystery until you finally peel open to the center of the box, and you've got this thing and it says "Play Me." And so they put it on, they play it, and there's me, and I'm personally as CEO, CEO saying, hey, here's who I am, here's what we're doing, here's why, here's everything that we know about you that we think suits our game. Why don't you come talk to us? And that was brilliant. That absolutely worked, and it got written up by the Wall Street Journal. We got it on MSNBC, covered us. That was the way we grew our team. So those are the two ways.
So, and it worked. I mean, you got a bunch of great people from that. Okay.
Absolutely, yeah.
So let me jump, because you make this game, and I mean, what is, people ask me, it's like, Jaffe, why don't you start another company? Why don't you make games, whatever, anymore? And I'm like, all those things you're talking about, the hiring and the having to be innovative in terms of how you get the right people and raise the money, and we change publishers, you do all of that and you jump through all those hoops well enough, which I did when I set up my last company. But then the game comes out and it doesn't deliver, and it's just like, it's almost like you've got to do two things. You've got to create a company and a culture, and then you've got to make a game. So Firefall comes out for you. You had done all this innovative setup. I mean, when did you know? Because how long was this game active? Because I mean,
can we set the timeline straight here?
Yeah,
because there's a lot of frankly physically impossible bullshit out there.
Okay.
All right. So when I was helming the game, it was during the beta period of Firefall, and we were getting just fanatical reviews internally from the beta test program.
Gotcha.
People loved the fact that there was no leveling. It was an MMO where you could go anywhere in the world, that it was filled with dynamic events, that wasn't like the way other games were doing at a time, where just an event spawns over and over at the same location. We were doing stuff that hadn't been done before, and it was fully, the shooter-based combat was great. The mobility was awesome with jetpacks and gliders. People felt this huge sense of freedom in the world, and everything was crafted, and so that people were chasing resources, and we had the most fun resource gathering of any game. People told us we call it thumping, where basically it's a dynamic encounter to get the resources that you need, and people were loving it. And then there were some problems. I'd sold the company by that time to Chinese investors, right?
Okay.
And I'm not gonna go into that. Let's just talk about the timeline.
Okay.
I left, and the investors demanded that the game be changed to WoW with guns. They added leveling. They took out the resource collection. They took out secondary fire. They completely changed the story, and they made it.
Well, hang on though. What was the reason you left though? I mean, that seems like a.
Well, let's get that into a second. I'm happy to get into that in a second.
Okay. Right.
But let's just get the timeline straight. Beta's going great. Whole team is there. Nobody's leaving. Everyone's driven. I resign. The company changes the game completely.
Right.
Launches the game. Thrashes making changes for 2 years. And then the game fails and the company closes. I wasn't even there.
When it launched.
I wasn't even there when it launched.
Right.
So people saying that, oh, he tanked the game. It's like, no, I was there when people loved the game. And when I left 2 years later, when I
Right.
wasn't even there, that's when it closed down. That's the timeline that nobody sees.
Do you
And
get
nobody
okay? So you're
understands.
saying you get a lot, and I imagine this week with kind of people coming out with their knives for you, is that been what you've been seeing again? This idea of like, oh, who's this fucker to talk about anything because his last game failed or something?
Oh yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
you know what? Yeah. But
I can relate. They only remember your last game. It's like people are like, your last game was shit, Jaffe. I'm like, bitch, I worked on like 15 games and most of them have great reviews. Go suck my dick, motherfucker. But
you're only as good as your last game.
yeah, that seems to be the case.
That is absolutely the case, and I understand that. I just wanted to point out the timeline.
No, I was good. I appreciate it because I didn't know that. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into a deep story, but can you just like in a 1 or 2 sentence, like at a philosophical level, you build this company, you work your ass off to build a great team, people are loving the game, and then you leave. Why?
Because of two things. One was the management wanted me to lay off a bunch of people.
This is the new
And
management, right?
The new owners. Yeah,
Got it.
I sold the company to them. The new owners wanted me to lay off a bunch of people. I refused to do that. They insisted. We compromised. I was able to save most jobs.
Okay.
And we laid off like, I don't know, 10 to 15% instead of the 25 to 30 that they wanted.
Okay.
And and this was shades of Blizzard again too, because when I finished WoW, they asked me to lay off a bunch of the team, and that infuriated me. And then there's stuff going on that was no bueno, right? The owners of the company, and I have to be careful
I
here
understand.
because
there's yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, but the owners of the company were trying to their idea for the game was, we want to make it WoW with guns, because what we're going to do is we're going to pitch it to a bunch of Chinese operators and Asian operators and get a lot of money up front for this, because they think they're getting the next WoW, right? And we don't care how the game does, because we'll have our money at that point.
Oh, okay.
And so they had a bunch of investors that were ready to put money into the company. And I discovered that they were all getting kickbacks, the board of directors. That if they signed this deal with this company, every member of the board of director was going to get a chunk of change. And they offered me a bribe.
Really?
They said, I said, listen, there's some problems here. You're asking me to represent things about the company that aren't true. And to sign paperwork, swearing that this is the way the company is, and when it's not the way the company actually is. And they said, $2 million. I said, what? They said, sign the papers, you get $2 million. And at that point, I immediately contacted an attorney who's I had his book, an attorney who focused on these types of corruption cases, right?
Okay.
And I talked to the attorney and I said, listen, this is happening. This is wrong. And there's a lot of liability here. And they're like, well, these cases are often hard to prove, but, it's definitely sketch, right?
Okay.
So I said, I'm not going to sign the papers. Oh, they were incensed. Their big money deal was about to fall through. They were personally going to get kickbacks from this, right? And so I shit you not, the day after I said no, the week after I said no, they decided to have a secret meeting on the board of directors to remove me from CEO, but put me in a corner because they still wanted to use me. They had to protect the investor interest and say, no, we still got the WoW guy. Everything's cool, right? And they didn't expect me to resign the next day, because it was against my contract. I had to be CEO, or it was all or nothing.
Right.
It's like,
right,
you have me as CEO, or I'm gone. And they said, no, we're removing you as CEO, but you're going to stay, and we're going to get someone else to sign the paper, some patsy, right?
Yeah.
And And so, they had me they had me removed as CEO. They voted me out, but they kept me around because they wanted that value. And when I resigned, they freaked out. They absolutely freaked out. And what they did was they called my lawyers back a week later and they said, $1 million if he comes back as CEO.
You should have been
And I
like
said,
$3 million because you.
I said,
I want the 2 and the 1, but not for signing anything. I'll just come back. But anyway, keep going. You said what?
I said, fuck you.
Yeah.
Basically, I said, no way. There's no way I'm coming back. There's no way I'm signing those papers. And after that, now this company is Chinese. I don't know if you know how this works in China or how marketing works, but they are very used to buying articles. You mean
like reviews and press and stuff? You mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
You hire reporters and you have them write whatever you want them to write, and you get it published and you get the news out there. And during that time when we were doing marketing, they had wanted me to do a bunch of things. They said, "Oh, here, we're going to give $2 million to the owner's soccer team because and they'll wear Firefall jerseys, and you're going to pay the team salaries for a while." I'm like, what? And it's like, yeah. It'll be fine. The board of directors, we're all going to approve it. I'm like, okay. Hey, we want to give $500,000 to my buddy's America's Cup boat. So, and we'll put Firefall on the sale, and because he's a good friend of mine. I'm like, what? And they said, yeah. Don't worry, the board is going to approve this, and we're going to do it anyways. I'm like, okay.
I mean, that sounds great, right? It's product placement. So
then they're like, oh, and then they said, it's like, okay, before launch, we want to hire, and this is where the Xbox comment comes from, by the way. Do you remember the original thing you contacted me about how I said there's a lot of Xbox bots out there that are shilling for Xbox?
Oh, right. Yes, correct.
And, well, unfortunately, this does happen, not directly with U.S. firms, but in China, it happens directly. They wanted me to hire a company that employed thousands of social media accounts to post on forums and Twitter and everything else about how great the game was and how it's going to be the next WoW killer. And then they wanted to hire some celebrities to endorse the game on the down low, some major basketball stars. I won't name who.
Okay.
And I said, you're nuts. And they wanted to spend millions and millions on this. You know that game marketing budgets are 120 million these days.
Usually half.
So, people give me shit about a bus we never paid for. But it was a drop in the bucket, right? Our burn rate was far more than that bus.
Right. But now none of these things, though, they wanted to only do this in China, or they wanted to do this marketing in America?
Here. They wanted to do it in America.
Is it illegal to do that here? No,
it's absolutely not. In fact, there were many web publications at the time where if you bought advertising, in order to guarantee the click per banner, they would write articles favorable to your game at the same time. Nobody talks about.
But so you were opposed to it just morally, or were you like, because I mean, if you're saying this was kind of relatively common, why were you surprised by this?
Because I was opposed to it morally,
okay,
and because I saw where advertising was headed.
Okay.
I saw ad block. I saw the metrics from the limited banner runs and site takeover advertising that we did, and I said, this is shit. I said, you know what's happening? YouTube and Twitch. And we had the Twitch founders at our office back when they were just starting, right? And I talked to the guys, and I'm like, this is it. This is the way we got to do it. And that's when I started the video division at Red5. And I was way ahead of my time,
okay,
right? And nobody understood this. We interviewed so many people for VP of marketing at Red5. EA, top EA marketers, at every major corporation, game company. We talked to guys, and I was unimpressed with all of them because you know what they're used to? Give me the budget and I'll spend it, and they never think beyond that.
Right.
Okay. And what do they spend it on? TV spots, banner ads, all the usual stuff. And when I would talk to them about the future of Twitch and YouTube marketing, they would look at me like I was crazy. And so I was never able to find people to understand that, even within the own team. Everybody on the team thought that Twitch and YouTube was a waste of time.
Right.
And then we were going out, and one of the allegations was like, well, he spent all this money starting a YouTube studio. Yeah, we got a tiny warehouse and we bought some 4K cameras because I said 4K is going to be the thing, and we got to make sure that and video quality is going to be the thing in the future. Production values on YouTube are going to go up. Let's shoot with red cameras, and red cameras are pretty expensive. But you know what? Everybody switched over to red. All the main channels switched over to those same cameras, switched over to same professional production values, color grading, editors, all that stuff on the back end. And we started producing YouTube content at the time. And when we looked at, and when we would place, and then we would place our own ads for Firefall at the beginning and end of that. And then we also had Twitch streams shot at our own studios. We would hire influencers at the time to come in. We had Nathan Fillion, we had Felicia Day, we had, all these people come in. And back then it was a song. It was super cheap to get influencers onto your stream.
But okay, like,
Twitch,
but why is that okay, but hiring Kobe Bryant to pimp the game is not?
Because you can see them. They're there. They're in the Red5 offices environment. It's obvious that it's a sponsorship and a representation.
Oh, okay.
Right?
So the basketball thing would have been a lie. Like, yes. Okay, it would have been like, no, I just found this fucking game and it's great. Whereas this is like, no, we're calling it what it is. Understood. All right. Sorry. Keep going.
Mm-hmm. And we weren't hiring bots, right? We weren't hiring legions of social media accounts to pretend they were regular gamers and to shill stuff.
Got it.
And that stuff was on the rise, man.
Yeah.
So basically I said, listen, we can save a bunch of money, because they wanted me to spend $6 million on banner ads. And then they wanted like TV advertising. And I was like, you know what? I can get you a cheaper TV spot that runs over and over rather than one Super Bowl ad for God knows how much money. And we can at the same time save money on trade show costs, because trade shows, I don't know if you've ever priced them out, but at the time,
I was with Sony, and every year it was like we were at the very first E3, and then every year more and more and more until it was just like, this is not sustainable at all.
I mean, our booths plus travel expenses to get the team out there and everything, easily $3 million a show, right? If you want to do GamesCon on a AAA scale, $3 million. You want to do E3, $3 million.
PAX. Yeah.
I said, let's do PAX. Mm-hmm. We were the first to go to PAX,
right?
In that way, right? And we didn't, instead of spending $3 million, we spent $750,000 because it was a much smaller show then. And I remember TJ Kim coming in. TJ Kim was the founder and president of NCSoft, right? And a friend of mine. And we were having dinner, and he's like saying, why PAX? And I said, because direct to consumer is the future. You got to have a connection with gamers. You got to be talking to gamers on the game floor, and you got to be at a place not where the box buyers are, because everything's going online, and direct. You got to go where the gamers are. And he thought that was a great idea. He totally agreed. Yeah, but we were the first to do that. All this stuff was heresy at the time. When I came up with these ideas and I said, we're going to do this, and said, what's Twitch?
Right.
What are influencers?
So, okay,
why are you doing
I have to ask, I mean, you must have gone through a period of, after you left or resigned from the Red5, you must have gone through a period of, I don't know, just anger and mourning and because, especially when you get painted as the bad guy publicly, but you're kind of out there, according to what you're saying, you were sort of fighting the good fight. I mean, was that a hard pill to swallow, or was it just like, moving on?
I was used to success, right?
Yeah.
So that was very hard. And I didn't grow up with a spoon in my mouth. I literally grew up eating donated rice and sardines in a third world country, and I built my way up. But to have come all that way and to suddenly have all of this negative stuff that was, in a large part amplified and manufactured by careful placement of money by corrupt Chinese owners, And by the way, this is all on statement. The FBI came and interviewed me. So, people say, well, he wasn't let go because nobody offered him a bribe. I'm just like, well, you know what? You have to tell the truth to the FBI. You
Right.
cannot lie. And so, it's all on record with the FBI. They got a file on it. I don't know what they're going to do with it because, whatever. But,
Right.
but let me be fair. There's a grain of truth to everything. And there were many ways that I was a shitty manager. All right. Part of it was that I had an inherent conflict with the owners of the company who wanted the company to move in certain ways. And I was flying to China almost all the time, fighting over there with them. And that's when I had to pull back from the team, and I wasn't on the team every day. And then, my wife was very ill at the time, and so I was taking time to be with her and everything else. And none of this was clear to anybody. And I probably could have done a much better job of communicating this. I didn't tell anybody that they wanted to fire my entire executive team and 30% of the company. I was trying to prevent that. I was trying to, because my philosophy was, and I learned this from Blizzard, is try to shield the dev team from as much as the corporate
Right.
drama as possible so that they can concentrate on the game.
Yeah.
But looking back, I think that I should have said more. Or I should have been much better at explaining my YouTube strategy, my Twitch strategy, and why I was, not going to spend $6 million on banner ads like the marketing department wanted me to, and the board of directors wanted me to.
Got it. So
And
what are you doing now? Because since then, are you still making games, or are you kind of chilling, or what is your day to day? Before we get to the main reason we're talking, but this has been fascinating, and I sure appreciate it, and I think the audience will find it fascinating. But what is your job now, or are you just chilling?
after that, I sort of retired for a little bit.
Okay.
Right? I said I need a break, and I'm not sure. And it was another, I don't know if I want to do games again moment. But then a bunch of people wanted me. They said, Mark, we really, really loved Firefall during beta, and it turned into such a shit show after you left. We're going to do a petition, and we're going to ask you to make a spiritual successor to Firefall.
Okay.
And so I was like, yeah, you're shitting me. And so I was like, you know what? Tell you what. Let's dip our toe in the water. Let's do I think it's like, let's do a $500 crowdfunding to see if you want a website, just to say that we're considering the game and a set of forums. And I was shocked. People really wanted this. And I think we did 2,000 instead. And so we put up a website and forums. And I was like, okay, you got a website and forums. And I didn't think too much of it. But the interest kept growing and growing. And I said, okay, if you guys really want, let's take the next step. And I said, you know what? We're going to break. I said, we have to do this differently, because I don't believe in one crowdfunding and you're done.
Right.
That's not how you get a game made. I said, let's treat you as the publisher. So let's say that, crowdfunding is the publisher, and we're going to break our stuff into milestones. And as we hit these milestones, we'll do a new crowdfunder. If you like the milestone, it'll be backed. If you didn't like the milestone, it won't be backed, and the project stops. Now, maybe people don't know this in the industry, who are not in the industry, but the way a publishing contract works, if you're a third party,
Yeah, it's
an
exactly
internal
like that. Exactly like that.
you're paid month to month,
Yep.
right? And you're paid only your burn rate. And yeah, companies will pad it 10-15% because it's really, they're really got you under lock and key,
Yeah.
right? They're like, we're killing your entire company as soon as you don't, we don't like your milestone, or if you don't put the latest marketing fan in that we really want.
Right.
Like, skateboards are hot. Why can't you have skateboards in your fantasy game?
Right.
What do you mean, no? You're not getting paid next month.
Yeah, it's a terrible fucking racket. I'm thrilled to be out of it, but keep going. Keep going.
It's as abusive as the early record industry was. And so I was like, you know what? If I'm going to be accountable, I want to be accountable to the audience. And so we did this, and it was a slow burn, right? Like let's say we're only going to do part-time. We're not going to do offices. And we're gonna see if we get any interest, and we kept getting more and more interest. So, I'm making a spiritual successor to Firefall. It's a little bit different because we in Firefall we had the concept of powered armor,
Yeah.
right? And basically you have powered armor, and you can craft and tune everything on it. So you can tune your jetpacks, you can tune your glider abilities, what abilities you have, you know. And it was, I said it was, the analogy I use is like, this is Gran Turismo for power armor. So you're going to have a garage, you're going to collect a bunch of suits, and you're going to spec them out in different ways. And you can put decals on them and everything else. And then you're going to go out in this world, this sci-fi post-apocalyptic world, and you're going to have fun in these sort of open world dynamic encounters that are, and this is another thing I wanted. I wanted to be driven by AI back then. I said graphics is not the next frontier, AI is. And again, people were like, sure. I said, we have all these cores on desktops. We have all these cores in a server farm. We have all this data coming in from players that's collected in a centralized place. We can use that to drive AI and have really dynamic worlds instead of static worlds. And we can solve the content problem, which, as you know, in MMOs, at least, they're constantly racing to come out with the next update because players chew up the content, and it's not a sustainable thing. So I wanted to have more and more sophisticated generated content. Anyway, what I'm doing now is called Ember, and it's a spiritual successor to Firefall with the power armor, except I'm taking it a step further, because eventually what we wanted to have in Firefall was battles against giant creatures called Titans.
Okay.
Right? And that was in our trailer for PAX, but we never really got to that. And after I left, they kind of went down to traditional raid boss encounter system that WoW used, because they really wanted WoW with guns.
Okay.
So Ember focuses on you versus kaiju, giant Godzillas, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at the page right. I'm looking at the page right now. Okay, keep going.
Oh, don't look at that page. I'll explain that later.
Okay, all right.
So basically, I was a big fan of a couple things. I was inspired by Edge of Tomorrow. I don't know if you, Live, Die, Repeat. What do they call it?
Yeah, it's like 3 titles at this point. This is the Tom Cruise, Emily Blunt, Groundhog Day sci-fi thing. Great.
I wanted
great
that horde feeling mimic invasion thing, because one thing people loved about Firefall was the dynamic invasion system. Like the Chosen would come and invade cities and stuff like that, and all the players would gather to push them back in order to push back the territory, right? So I wanted that sort of chaotic feeling of war battles in a sci-fi setting. And then I also wanted this Attack on Titan feeling, right? I wanted like a bunch of guys in power armor and mechs, because you can have mechs in Ember, as you progress and craft more powerful suits, to go up in mass, like 100 players versus a giant kaiju, defending a base that the players have built together in an open world, right? And to everything to be completely resource driven. So everything's crafted in the game, and there's no classes. You can customize all the modules. You can tune them. So if you wanted to focus on DPS for this ability, or if you wanted more of to put points into the skill-based factor of it, because it is a skill-based game, then to pull off a special move, you could do that, all that sort of stuff. So I've been working on that with basically.
Is there a build yet? I mean, are you playing it yet, or your Kickstarter or your founders?
We've gone through 3 milestones, and we have a playable build, but it's a white box build.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually dialed it back, because one thing I found is we had a build that had, full graphics, full terrain, textures, everything else. You could fly around, you could use abilities, some of the Firefall abilities that you used to like. You could glide. It had the jetpacks. It had the mobility. It had more mobility in Firefall, and it was all like gussied up. But I was like, you know what? Since we're making the sausage here, since we are showing you dev builds, and we would drop builds, a couple times a year, everyone gets a new build to play.
Mm-hmm.
People were thinking that was the complete game. And they weren't understanding that what we're doing is we're building a vertical slice for a much bigger crowdfunding, a Kickstarter, so to speak,
right.
that would launch everybody into full-time status from part-time status, right? And so what I did was I said, I don't want those expectations, so I'm removing all the textures, and I'm removing all the final models, and we're going to go with simplified white box stuff and in some cases boxes for enemies.
Just so it's clear for people.
Just so it's clear for people. So that's what's currently up. You can still download the old graphical version of it. We keep both versions on there.
Oh, great.
But the current build is white box. And now what we're doing is we updated to Unreal 5, and we are I'm using a lot of their new animation systems to get more personality out of the mobs. And this is something I want to talk to you about. Okay. It's like, how do you deliver, and Diablo does this well, does this well too. How do you deliver personality in the enemies where they're interesting and engaged? So, one thing that I think about is the difference between Destiny enemies, Destiny 2, and Anthem, right? I don't know if you've played either.
I've played the first Destiny, but not Anthem.
Okay. So, and in Destiny 2, the enemies have huge personality. They're like ducking shots. They're taunting you. They're ducking into cover. They get frustrated and roar and rush and charge and melee you. All this sort of stuff. Beautiful, subtle animations everywhere that give them life. And in Anthem, it's a shame they just kind of stood there, right? They just kind of stood there and shot at you, and they had no personality. And I was like, well, that's just not very visceral or engaging. And so what we've done now is for the past, and for the longest time, I could not. This is shades of Red5. I could not find a technical animation programmer. And we finally got one 3 months ago, and so we've been going through all the NPCs. We've been going through all the NPCs in their final white box models, and we have been adding all the animations we had made for them, everything else, and then we're going to start to build the encounters. The other thing we've been working on is our horde technology. I wanted that. I just wanted a huge amount of fodder mobs on the screen, right? And you can't do that with traditional animation techniques. It's too expensive. And so what we've been working on is our swarmer technology, where, and this is inspired by, like, you remember Halo when the flood comes on? Very level where it's just crawling with enemies. We've been working on ways to animate that. And so now we're using particle driven systems, and we can have, like, not that this is what we will ship with, because gameplay wise, it looks cool to have 250,000 spider creatures on your screen, but it ain't going to play well.
Right.
But I wanted to make sure that we could run on lower end systems, and so we put a lot of work into that technology, and we're at a point now where we've got the graphical rendering down, and we're working on the networking stuff.
So if people are interested and they want to contribute or they want to see this, where do they go at this point? You're saying don't go to the website, right?
No, because I'm completely revamping it. So the website's concept, and instead of concept, I want to actually have stuff from the game. So it's not high on our priority list, but we're going to redo the website. We're going to redo the materials on there, and we're going to show you more of the actual stuff we've been working on.
Okay.
So, and so in terms of a first impression, I'd rather wait for that.
Okay, so sit tight for the next crowdfunding when you actually want to.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sit tight for the next milestone, because that's when you're going to be able to really get a good impression of the game.
Okay.
Right now, everything's white box. We're just focusing on technology right now, and we need to revamp the website so that we're actually showing off more of what you can do.
Got it.
But yeah, it's basically, that Edge of Tomorrow, Attack on Titan feeling, a bunch of you versus these giant creatures, a world that you build together and push outwards to terraform, player bases that you build together like an RTS.
Cool. It sounds like a lot of fun, and it's fun to see that you got back up, and a lot of people are like, Jeff, you just get off the mat. I'm like, no, I like the mat, but it's it's nice down here. But for you though, that's pretty cool that you're just like, no, that's what I do. I get out there, I do stuff, and I lick my wounds, I get back in the game. That's pretty fun. Well, so
the reason I'm doing this is for all the people who loved Firefall in beta, those guys who were so disappointed when management changed the game to WoW with guns and took out all the features. And Firefall was not crowdfunded. That was traditional publishing. We're talking about huge budgets, offices in Shanghai, all this stuff, right? And I got a mission. It's like I got to give them the game they wanted. And if we dial it back, and I hesitate to call it an MMO, right? Because when you say MMO, people think a certain structure.
Right.
They think leveling, they think raids, they think everything else. And we're all, and let's face it, most MMOs these days aren't even like, about 1,000 players on the screen. It's more about running dungeons over and over again with your buddies. And we're focusing on more like, okay, 100 person teams, 100 player team per zone, dynamic events, focus on the open world. It's not about raids. It's about crafting, building, pushing back and winning more territory, and fighting a war against enemy aliens that have kaiju as their war beasts.
That's pretty awesome.
And it's also sci-fi versus fantasy, right? So you've got tanks, you've got planes, you've got mechs, and the other side has kaiju of different size, shape, and kinds.
Got
right?
it.
And it's that sort of like duality.
It sounds really, really cool. It's on my radar now, and I'm looking at some gameplay footage right now as we're talking. So cool. It's pretty fucking neat. And I assume it's, it goes without saying that your start screen is going to be the best start screen in the history of video games, correct? So what? No. Okay, so let's get to that, because I know that's the main reason I reached out, and that's sort of why you're in the news this week. But so look, I mean, I've been all over the place with start screens. We spent so much time and money on the Twisted Metal Black start screen, and then God of War I wanted to be right into the game, and so it was nice looking, but it was Kratos' face. You hit start, he jumps off a cliff, you're off to the races, right? So I mean, I don't know if I necessarily agree. I'll just read people who aren't familiar with the quote or your tweet. The other day, I guess you got a Starfield image from somewhere. Obviously, it's out in the wild with reviewers and whatnot.
Twitter. It was on
Twitter. Okay, it's a very simple screen. It just says Starfield. There's a team message in the right, and it's like news settings. It's like if you played Elden Ring. It's just the title and some choices. And you wrote the physiognomy. I looked it up. Jesus fucking Christ, man. That's a $20 word. But basically, the look of start screens. The start screen of a game can reveal a lot about how rushed the team was and how much pride they took in their work. Starfield start screen either shows hasty shipping deadlines by a passionate team overworked, or a team that didn't care. And obviously, you got a lot of pushback. Forget the pushback from the console war people, whatever. Sony probably loves you today. The Sony fanboys love you today, and Xbox hates you. And if tomorrow you're like, I love Phil Spencer, they're a fair weathered group of friends. But it was fascinating that Pete Hines struck back, which I'm sure you saw, and Mike Bithell, game developer, struck back. And if we look at the tweet, you obviously, from your pedigree and just from this conversation, games. You've got some of the most advanced chops in the business. You know what you're talking about. But I got to say, when I saw the tweet, I didn't care. I don't give a fuck. But I'm just kind of like, that's odd. Like, was he drunk when he wrote this? I mean, do you really believe that a start screen really can be a reflection of what's after, like when the game begins? I mean, there's so many games that don't prove that to be true. Where was your head, and do you still agree with this?
Let me say this. Why would anyone care what I have to say about a start screen that I think is mid? Why?
Okay. I thought you wanted me to answer. You keep going.
Why? It's partially rhetorical.
Oh, okay. I'll give you an answer though, but keep going.
Why would anyone give a shit when they're so fond to point out that I haven't worked in AAA gaming since 2014, 2016, right? Why would people get so upset that they would send not death threats? I didn't actually get any death threats this time. And let's call them Hallmark cards that said, "I wish you were dead."
Right? They're fucking idiots. Okay, they're idiots.
Hallmark cards. It's like, oh, that's great. Wish you were dead. In various ways. And then the personal attacks on, how fat you are. By the way, I've lost a lot of weight, but they keep bringing up the old photos of me.
I've only
instead of
seen
the
you
new
as this
photos.
cartoon character. That's how I think of you when
Yeah.
you talk. So I don't know.
And they're like drawing tic-tac-toe boards on my head, and they can't even get tic-tac-toe right. They did it in X's, and they boxed themselves into a corner, basically.
Right.
And they can't even get that right. And all this intense emotion over what's just at this point of my career, being semi-retired, working on a little indie project, long gone from the AAA scene, of what's just another gamer opinion on the net. This is not my original opinion. I saw tweets come in about that screenshot saying this looks kind of mid. And I thought to myself, it's like, yeah, I mean, I actually am not saying anything about the quality of the game. This is what people were told. This is what they believe. This is not a comment on the quality of the game. This is more of me, looking through Twitter, wondering what are the factors that make a start screen not the same as the rest of the game when you put so much time and effort into creating a game. And I said, the reaction here, is this really rational? Is this more like a sports team? When a sports team loses and the fans go out and riot, they pull down the goalposts, they go out and they smash cars and start fires. It's like, was my tweet about some important social issue?
Okay, and that's fair. But I think, like I said at the beginning, if you separate the stupid fanboys, which I think it's a great analogy you're making about like the sports teams and the sports fans. It's like, people who want the narrative pushed that they're in favor of, they will hitch their wagon to almost anything that helps them. So that doesn't interest me at all. What interests me?
It interests me.
Well, yeah, but it almost shouldn't. Because I appreciate that it does, of course, but it almost shouldn't, because those people they're not really responding to your. I guess what I would say is this: is you're looking for I don't understand the vitriol based on this and that and the other, and I'm like,
no, I totally understand the vitriol.
Yeah, but you're right. But the people that you're talking about, which make up 98% of the responses, they're not really looking at this rationally. That's not what this is about for them, right? This is just my team. I think,
and they also mistakenly thought I was commenting on the quality of the game.
Well, I thought you were commenting on the quality of something other than the start screen. That's why I was curious, because I was like, wow, you took all that from a start screen?
As a designer, I tend to deal in theory a lot, right?
Okay, yep.
And this was me musing about what would be the factors when someone has worked on such a gargantuan game with all the funding and all the passion. Wouldn't you want to put your best face forward? And I was thinking, I wonder if you could draw a correlation between, and that word, I can't pronounce it either because it's not my word. Here's what was happening. I was on Twitter, and I don't know if you know this, but on the main Twitter feed, if it's not under the followers tab or people you follow, you get pushed stuff by the algorithm.
That's right.
Right.
And that's the main feed. It sucks. You have to swap.
And
yeah.
I noticed two things. One was people were expressing concern about the Starfield start screen. Why, it looks mid. It looks mid. And I kept thinking, well, what would be the factors?
And this was before your tweet. You're saying this gave rise to your tweet. Yeah.
This is absolutely, I didn't come up with this. People were already saying this, right? And I was like, why would that happen on a game dev team? And then the other thing that was being pushed to me was there was this meme about how do you pronounce the word physiognomy?
Beats the fuck out of me.
Right.
Yeah,
I think it's physiognomy.
Okay.
There was a meme tweet going around with a guy, and I think it was from the 1920s, right? It was like a 1920s man in a suit with he had like these deformed pointy ears and something about his forehead, and they were saying, ladies, observe the physiognomy of the unfaithful man, right?
right.
And it was like how you can tell if your husband will cheat on you if they look a certain way. Mm-hmm. And so it was late at night, and I'm thinking, okay, So here's something that's trying to Sherlock Holmes a bunch of clues about some guy's face and how if there'll be a faithful husband or not. And then at the same time, the algorithm's feeding me these Starfield tweets. And I had just been tweeting about Starfield. It's like, hey, should I pre-order it? And then I went for it. I said, okay, I'm going to get it on Game Pass. I just started to download. I'm excited to play, you know. And I started musing aloud late at night. And maybe I shouldn't muse aloud. But, I said, I wonder if you could explain why the screen looks the way it does by internal factors on the development team. And my default position was, hey, if you're a super passionate team, but you're pushed for time, the last thing you're going to do is redo the start screen. And I remember, like on World of Warcraft, that's like the last thing. We had a start screen in place, but that was the last thing we touched, right? Mm-hmm. And what happened was we didn't even task it out formally. It's just like the team was so passionate, so excited about having finished WoW that some artists went back and redid the start screen. And it came out looking great, right? And there's a lot of misconceptions here. It's like, it's called minimalism. It's like, no, I'm not talking about the minimalism. I'm talking about graphic layout. I'm talking about the choice of the menu and the choice of the image, and there could be a lot more things going on. Like if it's animated, there's some evidence that star comes up over the planet, and it could be really good. It's like, but I said either they ran out of time and they had to ship the game, which happens all the time.
Sure,
this.
Oh yeah.
Or they just didn't care about the start screen. At no point was I thinking the game. And that's what people took from it.
I took it. Right? I took that as well. And I'm looking at the sentence. I mean, again, you meant what you meant, and it's great you are explaining it. But I will say, and look, I'm a guy who's written a bunch of tweets that I'm like, dude, it's very clear what I meant. You're looking for controversy as the French. I don't fucking know who says that shit. But you're looking for crap when there's no crap there. So I get that stance because I've been the victim of it as well. But I will say the last sentence, it did read to me like when you said or a team that didn't care. I guess what you're saying is you think they didn't care about the start screen, but it read like it's just the team didn't give a shit. And whatever. I mean, I think that's probably what most people took.
I think that's what they did take. And, I don't know. I'm not there on the dev team. There's no way for me to know. I was more interested in the fact that why aren't our start screens better? What are the factors that go behind that, right? And how much value do they actually bring? I mean, I think it is a good, interesting discussion, actually, as somebody who's not about the value. It's not about the value.
What do you mean?
Start screens are an art form.
That's
right?
the value. I don't mean financial value. I mean what does it contribute to the overall experience that you're selling to the user?
It's like signing a painting. I think. I believe that, if you're passionate about a game and you have the time and the resources to do it, it's a nice thing to do to dot that I, cross that T, and sign the brand and give people a great welcome screen to your game. That's just me, right?
What? Okay, sure. I agree, but I think again, it doesn't matter. We'll know when the game comes out. I look at this.
But in the end, why does it matter? It's a tweet about. Here's what happened.
It doesn't matter to those 97%, 98%. I think for me, it's only a question of. I can relate to it because I've said things before where I'm like, guys, that's not what I meant. And I'm curious what you felt as Pete Hines comes at you.
I think that's beyond. I'll get to Pete in a sec.
Okay.
But it's a post about a start screen. It's some musings I had about what that may or may not say about how rushed the team was. And I defaulted to passion. I assume that they're passionate. You can tell that this is a huge game and everyone worked their asses off to make it.
Okay.
Right? But it really doesn't matter. It's a tweet. about a start screen is a gamer opinion, just like any other gamer opinion out there. And I certainly wasn't the first to voice this. And I'm not an influencer. I'm not going to affect sales. No one's going to be hurt by this. And people are acting like I murdered people.
Well,
and
I don't. I have to say though, I gotta be.
Listen,
I'm an honest. I'm an honest fella. I'm not gonna lie to you. I love talking to you. I'm a fan. I didn't know you that well until you've told me all your stories. I'm like, I'm a fan of this guy, but I'm not gonna sit here and lie. I think the fact of the matter is that everything you're saying, you're right. It doesn't matter. Of course, it doesn't matter. I don't think anyone really is sitting. If somebody's sitting at home still thinking about this in a meaningful way. They have bigger issues because you're right. It is just a fucking tweet, and you're not going to affect sales. But I think it's a little false to assume, to kind of try to walk it back and say the language here. Hey, I was just kind of philosophizing. It's like
I'm not walking it back.
Yeah, but it doesn't. But it doesn't come across that way though. It does not come across as a guy who's like, hey guys. Let's talk start screens. This is kind of interesting to me. It could be this, could be that. Hell, maybe it's minimalism. I don't know, but my first impression is not good. That's like you're making it sound like that's what you wrote, but
the screen is mid. Now maybe with animation and music and everything else, it all ties together. The screen is mid.
Based on the singular image, sure. But would you agree that there's a lot of great games that have mid start screens?
Yeah, sure. So there's examples that are brought up. Like they were saying, oh, Chrono Trigger is just the title and a swinging pendulum. But they put time into that. The swinging pendulum had to be done in mode 7, right?
Okay, what about Elden Ring? Take Elden Ring, one of the best games ever made.
So I can't comment because I don't play Elden Ring.
Got it. Okay.
So I don't know. So
it's basically this. It's the title Elden Ring, the font, the key art. That is on everything, and then underneath it says new game, load game, online settings. That's it.
That's fine. That's fine.
But it's mid, right?
I have no problem with. I don't know if it's mid or not. I think looking at it, I think it's kind of mid.
Okay.
I'll agree. It's mid.
Right.
But what are the reasons why behind that screen is mid? Is it a cultural thing? Because in Japan, a lot of game screens are like that.
Yeah.
Right. They have the title and it's start to continue. But in Western games, a lot of the examples that were brought up, there's a lot of subtle animation. Even like Ghost of Tsushima, right? That was one that was brought up a lot. That screen is gorgeous.
Yeah, with all the flowing
brass and all this stuff, everything else. It's like they had the time to put into that. So I forget what your original point was.
No, I guess my point was, I think if someone's listening to this part of our conversation,
I think I should be able to say this.
Of course,
is what I'm saying.
Well, first off, even if you said, not only do I think this screen is mid, but I want to shit on it, I would. Of course, you should be able to say it. But
I didn't shit on it.
No. What I'm saying is, you should be able to say anything. I support that right 1,000%. It's your opinion. I'm just saying that I don't believe, or maybe I do believe it, but here's what I would say. I would say you're either not in good faith looking at the parsing of your language and really taking into account the way people would take this, or you're just, you don't really realize what you've written. Because I think when you talk to me about it, I'm like, that sounds like a great discussion. Because like I said, I'm a guy who spent a lot of money on start screens. And then I got to a point where I said, I just want to be in the game. And there was a game called Dirt or WRC, one of those racing games. And I was like, it was so production value. And it was just, crazy camera moves and lighting and voice and acting. And I'm just like, could I just fucking drive my car? I gave you guys $70 for this game. Can I just drive I don't need your fucking flash, right? So there's a great conversation to be had there about start screens. I just think that
Why do people assume that I want blazing animations and sparkles and everything else? Is like, I have no problem with minimalism. That was the other thing and people were trying to read my mind here, right? I was like, oh, he meant the game. No, I didn't mean the game. Right. Oh, he meant minimalism is bad. He doesn't appreciate minimalism. No, I love minimalism.
Okay, well, here's what I'll say. I did a tweet. I don't know if you ever saw it. It got a lot of traction. I did a tweet asking people, and it was for a game design theory that we were talking about on my show. I said, look, would you go into a minority nightclub? And this was well after the Pulse shooting. But I said, whether it was LGBT or African American or Jewish or Muslim or whatever, and if you could get a gold trophy for killing everybody in the nightclub, would you do it? Right? And the philosophy, the reason I said that was people were like, how dare you tweet that? I'm like, I don't think we should do that. Although people have a right to do it if they want in terms of make a game like that. I don't want to make a game like that. It was more about, do players see NPCs as means to an end, as mechanics, or are we at a point with NPC presentation that they come across as more what their surface looks like? That was all it was. It was a hypothetical in order to get us into a think piece about game design. And people tore me a new one. And I shouldn't have. I mean, I did what I did. But in your case, though, I think it's kind of similar in that you probably could have worded it a little better if you cared. But it sounds like you don't care. You're leaving the tweet up, right?
No, it's up. It's up there. Because I think people are misinterpreting it, and I said what I said. And if I delete... Here's the thing.
I wouldn't delete it. I would not delete this.
Is it up to 10 million now?
I don't know, because I'm looking at a retweet of a retweet, so it's a screenshot.
Okay. 10 million people got their panties in a bunch over a gamer opinion. Okay? And to the point where people are trying to dox me.
That's different. They can fuck themselves.
But it's a lot of them, and they're saying shit that's like factually untrue, like, oh, he was fired from Blizzard. That was never true.
Right. And I saw somebody say you were a Nazi.
And then of all people, a reporter that I respect, Paul Tassi from Forbes magazine, right? Forbes tweets that basically I'm using a Nazi word. Now, why would you say that unless you were trying to draw the association? And so talk about walking back.
Sure, I thought that was really lame. That was really fucking lame.
Do you really want to say this, Paul? Because you're in a position where you're a reporter, and I take that shit seriously.
Yeah, I'm with you. Right? I'm with you on that. That was incredibly Bush League, insane.
Yeah, and so you have all these people, and it wasn't 1 or 2%. This is like a huge number of people. I don't know. This is not my first 10 million tweet. Okay?
I know. You've been in the woods.
This is not my first 10 million tweet. This is not, this is not 1 or 2%. This is a significant amount of people. And if you take like 10%, that's 1 million people. All right, saying absolutely batshit things, going out, defacing my wiki, trying to say things about my mother, and
Jesus.
The wish you were dead Hallmark cards, not death threats. I'm not going to say I had death threats before. I haven't received a single death threat. Just a lot of I wish you were dead cards.
God.
And attacks on my looks. Attacks on, and greatly unfounded attacks on, and fake news about Blizzard and other things, and just completely unhinged. And I'll tell you why it happened.
Okay.
There's a couple reasons for why it trended so hard. One is, and it's not because, and I thought it was funny. I think one person said, it's like, oh my God, how can you say this with your incredibly powerful reach? I don't have an incredibly powerful reach, right? I have 95K Twitter followers, which is not a lot. If it were to be monetized tomorrow, which I'm not monetized, I think my check for my tweets would be $60.
Okay.
I'm not an influencer. I'm not a YouTuber. I do not have incredible reach. But for whatever reason, and I think it's because that last time, you remember, I tweeted that the problem about botting in marketing,
right,
with Xbox, and I said kind of glibly, a lot of Xbox accounts are paid bots, right?
That's right.
And this is because, and this is probably another topic, that companies don't do this directly. Microsoft has been caught doing it, by the way.
Right, they have.
It's been in the news. But it's done through third parties. The way this stuff is hidden is you hire a third-party marketing firm to help promote your game, and they go out and they do bots, and you may hear about it back at corporate HQ, but you kind of look the other way.
So you're thinking even after Microsoft got caught, this is probably still happening for Xbox?
Because you don't question the results. You hire a firm to help boost the social media stuff. This happens all the time. That stuff gets outsourced, right? Blizzard does it, Microsoft does it. There's a core marketing department, and then there's the firms you hire.
Oh, I get it. But you're under the impression that they're still doing it even after they were caught.
Absolutely, because it works.
Okay.
Because it works. It's in, have you looked into how many streams are botted? And the plague of that happens that no one really talks about.
I know you can buy bots to watch your streams, but I know
and you can also embed streams, and that's another way that's done. And this is done regularly and even by many top streamers, right? And the way that they get away with it is they keep the percentage low, so you keep it around 10% or less in your bot stream. And this is not me. This is not my theory. You can go out. Right. There's some excellent reporting about this. You can go see that. And I know that that's what they wanted. The Chinese owners wanted to do at Red5. And I also know that these social media companies that get hired to make sure that they hit certain metrics of engagement are very likely to, on the download, do it. And the head company may never hear about it, or the head company may suspect, but they're just going to look the other way. Right. So once I did that tweet, and back to the point of why this trended.
Okay.
For whatever reason, I got so much engagement. I think that was a 5 million tweet, right? I think that got so much engagement that the algorithm said, anytime that Mark says something about Xbox, we're just going to push it in front of all the Xbox people because we're going to be able to sell ads, right? So I noticed that anytime I tweeted about Xbox, even if it's non-controversial, people would pick up on it. People who don't follow me, like for some reason, and I even tweeted about this, I think, a week ago. For some reason, the algorithm on Twitter promotes me. So you got that going for it. Then I picked up on two topics that were being pushed to people's feeds in the circle of gamers. I was being pushed that the Starfield leaked screenshot, right? And I was being pushed that what's that word? Physiognomy. I was being pushed that meme with the unfaithful husband from the 1920s. And I think that if you take the visibility I had, because the algorithm was promoting anything Xbox, because so many people engaged it, people don't understand this. The more you engage it, the more of that stuff you're going to get. So funny enough, if you don't want to see me talk about Xbox, don't sit there and send me flame mail about it, because Twitter's going to send you more.
Right.
So you take those three combined, and I think that automatically fed the algorithm and started trending it, right? Combine that with the fact that we are in a slow news cycle for games. AC6 comes out in 2 days. Starfield comes out in 9. Everything's under embargo. There's not a lot to talk about.
Right.
And I think that, that meant that, hey, we got to make a video today, because I don't know if people know this about YouTube algorithms. If you're not making a video every day or twice a day, the algorithm demotes you. You get downgraded, right? So, YouTubers have to put out content. It's a slow news day. It's like, well, we got nothing substantial to talk about. Let's talk about some guy, having a gamer opinion on a start screen.
Right.
Okay. So once a YouTuber catches on to that, it feeds back into Twitter. People go to Twitter to view it, and then that boosts it up. The more people engage that, the more the algorithm promotes the tweet, and you get a positive feedback loop. So you had this slow news cycle, you had these three factors in, and I think that's why it took off. And I have to say that this is another side topic. The fact that YouTubers have to push out content like this, and that we are being driven by the algorithm. Everything that content creators are, everything that they create is more and more being forced to conform to YouTube's algorithm. And so, unfortunately, this is another topic. You know how for a while, for a couple of years, we were like, well, web game sites, web reporting, web journalists, that's not where you go, because you get a lot of clickbait articles about, why there's testicles in Red Dead Redemption, right?
So you go to YouTube.
And so you go to YouTube and you get the more honest shit, right? What's happening now is that and YouTubers are complaining about this constantly, is that the algorithm is changing in such ways that they are now being forced to do the same sort of clickbait that the web press outlet does. And it's sad to see, because you are getting more outrage YouTube, you're getting more make a mountain out of a molehill type of stuff, because the algorithm demands it. And it's sad to see, because I love YouTubers, and unfortunately they're being driven down that same advertising at all costs pipeline that all the web outlets were.
Right.
So anyhow.
So but all of that to say, though, if you could go back in time, would you reword this tweet a little different, or you would not change a thing?
Now let me say this. First of all, to the Starfield team, I'm sorry if you ever felt slighted about that, because I have nothing but respect for you guys. I'm looking forward to your game. I can't wait to play it. And
you already bought it. Guys, you already bought it. You gave him money.
I already bought it. And for you guys, I would go back in time and reword that tweet. For all the Xbox guys out there who did nothing but send hate my way, no, the tweet stands.
Oh yeah, go fuck them. Now Pete Hines, I take issue with. I didn't like Pete Hines' response to you. I thought it was.
Snarky.
It was snarky, and I'm like, look, motherfucker, you just put out Redfall. You're in developer jail right now. You don't get to say anything.
But look, he's got a job to do.
No, I know.
So his job, I mean, which is really funny, because he's got a job to do. Basically his whole career growth was with Bethesda. He started in, I think he did a little QA. He's in PR. He ran PR for a long time. Now he's head of publishing, right? I think that's a recent thing.
Yeah.
So he better own that Redfall shit. I think I said at one point.
Yeah.
But his job is to increase the Q factor. I don't know if people use that term anymore. Marketing Q, marketing quotient. That's where you want to increase the visibility of your product, especially before a launch. He sees a tweet go viral about the game. It's his job to leverage that into more publicity for Starfield. All right?
That makes sense. I hadn't thought of that. I thought he was just like, I'm going to defend my team.
And he wouldn't reply to me if it never took off.
Yeah, it's a good point.
He's doing his job. This is his job. And he has to do this. Not only because when it reaches a certain point, it should get an official response, and so that it's dismissed as being, not true or whatever that he wants to say about it. But not only that, at that point, the tweet was so viral and so big, trending, that he has to amplify that because it's good publicity for the game, because it's going to rally the troops. It's going to rally all the consumers that are Team Xbox and Team Starfield. They'll go out and they'll buy the game just to spite this guy. So maybe I will influence sales. I said I have no influence over sales. I actually think I boosted sales. I'll take my check, Pete.
Yeah, there you go. All right, well, look, go ahead.
But what he said by putting, it's like, at first he says, hey, it's a start screen. We just did it. What's the big deal? But then he has to add this sentence about, this is really disrespectful coming from a dev.
And dev was in quotes.
And dev was in quotes.
Right.
But
to his credit, he also didn't finish the sentence with a period. So maybe he doesn't know how quotes work. But assuming he did, it was shitty.
This makes no sense, because I had millions of people telling me I'm not a dev, right? And then Pete wants to claim I'm a dev, and that's why I shouldn't say it, and I shouldn't have a gamer opinion, because I consider myself a gamer making an indie game now. I'm not a AAA dev, right? I can't be a dev that shouldn't say this and not a dev at the same time. That makes no sense except to be a snarky, shitty comment.
That's right.
Right?
I thought it was bad.
And so, I had a couple replies up there, because I didn't reply to that, but somebody threw it in my face and posted to me. So I responded to him. It's like, oh no, the head of, and I put PR in quotes, doesn't like my tweet. I'm done. But God bless Pete. He's doing his job. He's got the most views on that tweet than he's ever had in his life. Let him have that.
No, that's true. I hope what he has is a fucking hit. I hope they fucking pull something out.
Again, to the Starfield team, I really hope that you guys are not overworked, and that you guys are, and if you are working hard, it's out of pure passion, and you bring back that passion in a way that we see in AAA that we haven't seen for a very long time, because that's what the industry needs. That's what I want to play, and I am looking forward to it.
Hang on here, you get the big sound off. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm excited for it, and I got to tell you something. I mean, I love talking to you. I appreciate. I was going to talk to you for 10 minutes just about this, but I didn't know 90% of the stuff you shared about Diablo and Blizzard and your God damn it, Factor 5. What's the company that made
doesn't matter.
Yes, it does. Lair and the Rogue Squadron. It wasn't Factor 5.
Red 5.
Red 5. I always get
Red 5 standing by.
I would always get those fucked up. Anyway, though, I loved it. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you taking the time to talk about this topic specifically, but I'd love to have you back on to talk about other things down the road if you're up for it. But either way, thank you so fucking much for the time, man.
Sounds good, David. Thanks for having me.
All right, anytime. See you.
All right. Take care.